I don't think anyone's ever come back from 0-3, but it's going to happen at some point.
Steph Curry from downtown puts it in. And Steph Curry senses blood right now. Thompson rattles it home to tie the game. Draymond Green tries a three. It's good. The Warriors advance to their 5th consecutive NBA Finals.
So the Warriors sweep Portland, and it brings us back to Sneaky Hembo here on Get Up, and I love this question. True or false, Richard Jefferson, they became the only team ever to sweep a best-of-7 series without their leading scorer?
I'm going to say false.
Guess what? And here's why I love the question. It is true.
Yes!
It has never happened before. But here's the point. Here's the point. So Hembo's going to make this. Here's the thing.
That's not funny.
Hembo, bring this out to the table for a minute.
Hembo.
We need to just very briefly address this. Hembo's going to make this all about Hembo because that's just typical Hembo. But that's not what this is about. This makes the point that we were just discussing so firmly. The Warriors just did something that had never happened before. Sweep a series without their leading scorer. Go on, win the championship, and then have Durant re-sign there? It's impossible.
But wait a second. They did it to the 3 seed in the conference finals.
Yes, that's
but they
the point.
still did it.
They did it to the 3 seed.
That's what I'm saying. It's impressive. It's even more. It's not like a first round like they got Detroit and Giannis didn't play and they can still beat Detroit like Milwaukee. They did.
Does that, or does the point of the question is, doesn't that add fuel to what we've been discussing? That the narrative is overwhelming, right?
But this is their motivation.
This is their motivation.
They want to go down as the all-time greatest.
Yeah, and
so
they have all the talent.
They're checking all the boxes. 4-5, 3-peat. Best record ever. This motivates them.
Correct, but doesn't it have to? I agree with you, but doesn't that have to inform what KD has got to be thinking? This had never happened before. His team just swept a series without him, and that had literally never happened in NBA history before. It has to factor into this thing.
I think people are overlooking what KD wants. In the end, he has to make the best decision for himself, and if he wants to go down as the all-time greatest winner and being talked about like a Bill Russell, you stay there.
Yeah, I'm okay with him staying
there. If he goes to the Clippers and Kawhi goes, then they beat the Golden State Warriors. But anyway, speaking on a conference call to introduce new GM Trajan Langdon yesterday, the Pelicans Vice President David Griffin shot down the notion that likely number 1 overall pick Zion Williamson would need convincing in order to play for New Orleans. Griffin also expressed confidence again that the Pelicans could convince Anthony Davis to remain with the team. Take a listen to this.
We're very confident that we have a compelling situation for him here. And if winning is what he is indeed all about, which we have every reason to believe, we feel confident that we can create the right and are creating the right environment for Anthony and, frankly, for high-caliber players of all types. In the case of Zion Williamson, sat with he and his family the night of the lottery. Alvin and I were also together in interviewing Ja Morant. I think because we've sat with those kids who are both incredible human beings and all about all the right things, we know unequivocally that either one of them would be thrilled to join us in New Orleans, and they're both very much excited about the concept.
Okay, more on that in a moment. But Magic Johnson, who spent much of this past season trying to pry Davis away from New Orleans, is also of the mindset that the Pelicans would be a good fit for Zion Williamson. So take a listen to what Magic had to say about Zion. This was on First Take, his appearance on Monday.
Zion got lucky because Alvin Gentry can coach.
Yes, he can. Mm-hmm. Yes, he can. They have a lot of assets to build a team around.
Alvin Gentry can coach. He shouldn't think about all this craziness people are talking about. You go to New Orleans and you got a great coach that's going to help him get better because he needs to work on some skills that he doesn't have right now. And Alvin will do that for him.
There's a lot there to react. Well, there's so many different pieces of that to react to. But Zion's going to go to New Orleans. I don't think anyone has ever really seriously thought he would try to force his way out of there. Zion's going to go to New Orleans, yes?
Yeah, well, one of those things, he just said that they talked to Ja Morant, right? So this is a little bit, Anthony Davis has a little bit of, say-so, where he goes and what happens. Imagine if, I wonder, and this is completely nothing. But imagine if he was like, yo, I really like Ja Morant. If you guys can get Ja Morant, he's the guy, like I would stay. Would they ever do something like that?
Why would he, just tell me, why would he like Ja Morant more than Zion?
This is more of like they're talking about these are the top 2 guys, right? And they're most likely Zion is the number 1 pick, I believe that. But they're also trying to keep AD. They're trying, that's this juggling act that they both have.
Is AD open to being convinced to staying there?
I don't know this, but what I will say is this. If he stays there and you're looking at a guy like Zion that could be your partner for the next 10 years, right? Because he's probably going to sign an extension because the money is so great, right? So he's going to be there for the next 7 years. And this could be your partner. And then all of a sudden it becomes an attractive space. Again, we've talked about what Tim Duncan did in San Antonio. We've talked about what Giannis is doing right now. Chance to win the MVP title and Defensive Player of the Year in the same year in a small market.
And Tibbs, as this deal could potentially become attractive to other people, if the Pelicans do realize that AD's not going to stay there and he doesn't want to, how does the draft factor in here as being an attractive time to try to make people interested?
Well, I think it's important. That's why David Griffin has to sit down with Anthony Davis. He has to get that information now, and I think probably before the draft. And AD really hasn't moved off his stance of wanting to be traded, so he may have crossed the bridge. But that information is very important to David Griffin. So now he has to create, if indeed they do look to trade him now, it's important to do it now. That's when they're going to have the most value for him.
And that's the only place where I get a little curious. What if he just says, hey, we're going to keep you here. We'll trade you by the break if you're not happy. Because if you wheel him out there with him and Zion's playing great and the team's playing great, all of a sudden, the AD might change his mind, but you don't know what the situation is. But it is very, very compelling.
I think there's high risk in that from the standpoint of the longer you wait, the less you're going to get. And AD will be in control. His agent, whatever teams are talking about trading for him, his agent's going to make contact with that team and say, look, he's not going to re-sign with you. So now are you going to take that gamble? And some teams have, and sometimes it's worth it. It's worked out for some, and it hasn't worked out for others.
But at the end of the day, look, we saw it happen with Paul George in Oklahoma City, and it worked out. We'll see how it works out with Toronto. Again, they got a full year out of Kawhi. Let's see if he decides to stay there long term or not. But the point you're making is you believe the time they will get the most in return for him is before the draft, not after.
Correct.
Okay, so that I guess is what he has to figure out between now and then. We'll see. The notion that Anthony Davis stays in New Orleans, I think, is now not completely off the table. Meanwhile, back to football because of the Raiders, and they have started their voluntary OTAs. Those started yesterday, and Antonio Brown not present. Now, John Gruden was asked about this and asked about the idea that he should be starting to work on his relationship with his new quarterback, Derek Carr. And John Gruden was phenomenal. Listen to this.
Brown is a great guy. I love having him here. Derek's a great guy. You can't rush a relationship. You just don't have a great relationship in 3 weeks or 2 months. Something that you got to earn and you got to really work at. And that's why it's important that we spend time together. But I'm a little worn out with all the relationships and all the things that really don't matter right now.
Okay, so having had John Gruden on my show every week for like 11 years, I know that. That's his code for I'm not talking about this anymore. All right, that's how he lets you know I'm done talking about this topic. That said, is it significant to you, Marcus Spears, that Antonio Brown is not there beginning whatever that dynamic is with his new quarterback and his new team?
No, it's not, G. And a lot of people get hung up on OTAs. Let me explain OTAs. On the field activities is what it is. You do gain a little bit of a rapport, but Derek Carr and Antonio Brown has worked out together already. Antonio Brown has been doing this for a long time at the highest level you can do it at an NFL. So nobody questions his work ethic. Nobody questions if he'll be ready to start the season. And I'm with John Gruden. The relationship part is something that's developed over time. It's fragile in the NFL range, as we saw what transpired in Pittsburgh. But to make a big deal out of these guys missing OTAs, especially stars, everybody ain't the same. Nick Saban used to tell me all the time, everybody be treated fair, but everybody ain't gonna be treated the same. And when you are all pro, a perennial Pro Bowler like Antonio Brown, you not being at OTAs is not a big deal.
Look, I will defer to your understanding of how important OTAs are or aren't. And we saw Le'Veon Bell not show up with his new team with the Jets. They have a whole host of other things going on there now. But I do wonder, is it not something to send a message to your new team? I'm all in, and you guys should be all in with me. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be here for this, even though it's voluntary, and I'm going to lead the way. Follow me. Is there nothing to that?
Not when you've already created who you are
in
as
Pittsburgh.
These guys
this is 3,000 miles away.
Gee, you don't think they've seen AB do work?
Well,
just like the Jets have seen Le'Veon Bell, just like people in Cleveland have seen OBJ. If there was a question about these guys' work ethic, that's different.
But there were all kinds of other questions about them, right? We've seen a lot from OBJ. We've seen a lot from. We haven't seen Le'Veon Bell in a year because he sat out a season.
It didn't stop the franchises from signing them. None of this stopped the franchise.
But how about the players in that locker room saying, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to follow this guy. He's all in. He's here with us."
Every player that I've talked to about these guys love them as teammates, except a couple.
It's always the except a couple that is the most important part. All right, coming up, Aaron Rodgers riffing on the Game of Thrones finale, which brings up, in my opinion, the most important question we will ask and answer this morning.
And
we'll do that
agree with
next.